Great to see everybody tonight. Luke chapter 16. We're going to draw here from the first half of this chapter, a famous parable here that we see some teaching. And I want to look tonight specifically at stewardship. So we're going through a series on Thursday nights here, and we're looking at some different, I would call it sins of men. But the intention is not to call out the sins of other men. The intention is to show us that we all have areas in our own lives that we need to work on, right? None of us have arrived. None of us are perfect. And so what are some of these areas that are commonly overlooked or easily excused in our own actions and our own activities? What are some of the things that we look at? We see here this teaching on an unjust steward. We're going to come back and break down this chapter a little bit here in just a few minutes, the unjust steward. But what I really see here, and there's a great lesson in not only this parable, but even the teaching that follows with the account of the rich man and Lazarus, investing in other people. Okay, now I believe that this parable here of this unjust steward, the teaching here, and we see here that there is actually a teaching from Christ that comes out of this, and it's a little bit hard to decipher. A lot of folks will see that he is here commended by his master with eternal blessings, it would seem, for doing an unjust thing, but he is an unjust steward. So what we're talking about here is earthly function, earthly business, and a reward that comes to this man on earth by investing in men. That's exactly what he's done there. He's invested in men. Now, it wasn't with his own money, and it wasn't always right, but nonetheless, we see here taking our eyes off of ourselves and doing something for somebody else. And so that's what I want to look at tonight. And we've been talking about this. We've been talking about mentoring and these types of things, just very recently. But I want to look tonight more specifically at stewardship. So as I said, the intention is not to point out our brother's sins, but rather to see our own, that we may be able to clearly see and help the brethren, right? That's really what we want. Nobody's saying that we are rejecting help from others. We don't need help from others. Who are you to try to help me? Go fix yourself first. That's not the attitude of the Christian. That's not the mindset of anyone in this church. Rather, we know it says in Matthew chapter 7, "And why beholdest the mote that is in thy brother's eye, and considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye?" Of course, the teaching is we need to make sure that we can see clearly, that we have good vision before we go trying to, fix other people's issues. Because certainly when we have our own carnal minds and our own vision, we see other people's faults a lot more, clearly, we think, than we see our own, right? And it's a matter of perspective, I believe, and that's why having these things pointed out to us occasionally is good for perspective, and it helps keep us in perspective and helps keep us where we need to be, which of course is not just groveling in sin, or I'm not here trying to just kick everybody in the pants and this type of thing, but just understanding who we are and what we need to do. So what do we find? We find teaching in the Bible that we're supposed to judge ourselves. We're supposed to actually reflect. We're supposed to take time and consider our relationship with the Lord. And in this aspect here of stewardship or stewards, then this same thing applies, okay? None of us have arrived. None of us are perfect. Nobody in this room, I believe, is the perfect steward of God, and I'm including myself in that group. We all have areas in our lives that we could work on and improve upon to be better the steward of Christ. So there's some things that we need to understand here, though, if we're going to talk about stewardship, because we all have heard this word before. You've read it in the Bible. It's listed many times. There's qualifications of bishops and deacons and leadership that they need to be stewards. But what is it to be a steward? Well, there's a really important factor that some people overlook. Now, I had heard some preaching years ago on stewardship when I was a new Christian, and it really kind of hit home with me in my new walk. And the preacher was talking about how we need to be a good steward of the things that are given to us. And if we're not a good steward of the things that are given to us, then why would God bless us with more? And he used the illustration of walking through the church parking lot, looking in the cars that were out in the church parking lot, the congregation's cars, and pointing out the fact that you can walk by some people's cars and they're clean and kept up and maintained, and you can see that they take care of what they have. And then there were other cars that were just full of trash, full of fast food bags and wrappers and hadn't been washed, just, repairs not being made, just not being kept up. And he used that illustration to talk about how, if we're not, a good steward of the things that we possess, that we have, then why would God bless us with more? And I did get something out of that. I don't know, though, that we need to be limiting our stewardship to the material possessions that we have. Okay, there's a lot of areas in my life where I can say, well, I would excel in stewardship here, but I'm so lacking in other areas, right? Why would I even want to apply it to a material application? Okay, now, hey, take care of your property. Take care of the things that you have. But there's another element. There's something here that needs to be attached to the stewardship, and that is the fact that stewardship, to be a steward, that's the duty of a manager or a servant that is entrusted to care for a master's goods. See, this steward here is not in charge of his own possessions. It's not how well he takes care of his own things so that he can get more. The steward is in care and possession of somebody else's things. And they're to be not only taking care of those things to give back to the master, but actually using them. Now, to whose benefit? The master's benefit. That's the whole teaching. That's the whole application here. And we see this throughout the Bible. Okay? And so I'm not saying that there was necessarily anything per se wrong with the way that had been taught to me. And, certainly it's probably been preached more round in other sermons, but that one stuck out to me, right? So I gleaned something from that. But don't limit it to what we have. Don't think that if we need to just take care of the things that we have so that we get more. But certainly we do need to consider, are we a good steward of God's things, right? Not so worried about being a good steward of our things. Please be, but are we a good steward of God's things? Now, in the Old Testament, we find this phraseology used, speaking of a steward, 4 or 5 times. We're not going to go back and turn to these for time's sake. I'm trying to cut some off the front so I don't run short on the backside. But in Genesis chapter 15, we find Eleazar there, and he's named as the steward of Abram's house. So what does this tell us? If you go back and you look it up, then there is a master of the house, and the master of the house, the one who owns everything, has a steward, right? So he's the one that he has entrusted with, I would call it maybe the daily goings on of the household. Maybe he's got some kind of authority. He's got some kind of buying power. He can certainly do things in the name of the master, but everything that he is to take care of is the master's. In Genesis 43:19, it speaks of the steward of Joseph's house. And this, again, is a well-known passage, and stewardship is mentioned 3 times here, not only in just mentioning the steward of Joseph's house, but we remember it also mentions it in Genesis 44:1 and Genesis 44:4. He's the one that's actually to go and to take and to check the cup and to see where the money was and those types of things. Who did that? That was the steward. He was going to take care of the things of the master, okay? In 1 Kings 16:19, it's also mentioned, and it mentions there the steward of the house. Then we get up into the New Testament. So the teaching then in the New Testament is no different than that of the Old Testament. What do we find? We still find a relationship between a master and one's in his house. But the whole idea is that he's working for the master. Everything that he's doing is to benefit the master or the work of the master. And so that's where we really need to consider, what are we doing for the master? What are we contributing to the work of the master? We say, well, I do all that I can. I don't think that we do. And that's okay, because none of us do all that we can. Let's shed some light on this, and let's see if there's some areas where we can maybe consider what we're doing with God's things, not our things. Don't give me more of what you have, right? Don't try to invest more of what you have taken or what you possess or what you own. But let's keep all this in context of the Bible and who the Lord is, right? So we get up into the New Testament. We find still, just as we've seen before, the steward is not the owner of the property or the gifts. And this is important because we're going to find here that actually God gives us things to use to invest in others. But we can't get sidetracked in thinking that the things that God gives us for the use of others, for His use to benefit Him, His work in others, is anything that we possess for ourselves. We need to, forget about that. If we think that we're getting these gifts and we're getting these blessings so that we can benefit from them, that's a misnomer. We find also the second point. I'm going to develop these 3 points here. So firstly, the steward is not the owner of the property or the gifts. We only manage them for God. Secondarily, there is an expectation. And friend, I think Christians overlook this a lot. Now, we give lip service to the fact that there is an expectation of performance from us by God. And we say, well, hey, we're saved. We can't lose our salvation. And you're right. Praise God that we can't. Because friend, I'll tell you, if we could, we would. So it's not about that. But, think about the relationship that we have with anybody on earth, right? Isn't there something that you need to contribute to a relationship to have a good relationship? Of course there is. You're going to invest time. You're going to invest emotion. You're going to invest, a relationship, or you're going to put into the relationship so that you have that. We think that we're saved by God, by grace, through faith, and that, we just will never then be, nothing will ever be called into question with our walk or our relationship with Him. But friend, we'll look here in just a second. The second point, there is an expectation. So what is it that God looks for? God looks for faithfulness, wisdom, and active use. I'm giving you the conclusion before I even get into it, right? See, that way I don't cut it off. There is an expectation. God looks for faithfulness, wisdom, and active use. Specifically, what are we talking about here? Time, money, and talents and gifts. Now, you already know where I'm going to go, even just mentioning these. You know the Bible passages, you know the parabolic teachings and the applications, but let's not overlook them just because we know them. What is it that He's looking for? He looks for us to do these things rather than hiding them or wasting them, right? That's a shame. It's a shameful thing. And we can read about these ones in the Bible that do foolish things, and we think, what a fool. Didn't he know that God would have provided? Didn't we know that God would have met him where he was? What a foolish thing this so-and-so did. Friend, that's all of us. That's us in that spot. Usually the foolish one, or the one that, is so blatantly, obviously wrong, that's the decision that I would have made probably, right? So, we need to think about that. There is an expectation. And thirdly, there's a reward. There is a reward. Friend, we all look forward to going to heaven. We all look forward to being with the Lord Jesus Christ. We all look forward to that, and we will all enjoy that as born-again believers. Friend, we will see our Father in heaven. We will meet Him. We will see God face to face. We'll see Him as He is. We'll see those that had gone on before, the other saved ones. We will see that. But friend, there is a reward, and faithful servants receive greater responsibilities and the approval of their master. And that means a lot. It really means a lot, especially when you keep in perspective who it is that we're working for, okay? That you really look forward to that day where we can stand before God and we can see Him and stand there, finding favor and having that approval in that way. Again, I'm not speaking of salvation, but just, in being faithful. And we'll see, again, an application when we develop this out, where that's exactly what we look forward to. And friend, I venture to say that everybody looks forward to that type of an entrance into heaven, or that type of a interaction with God. I don't think everybody's going to hear these same words as they approach Jesus and the Father. So let's look at the New Testament teachings that confirm these. Let's develop these points, and let's see how a person might lose a responsibility or stewardship that was entrusted to them by God due to unfaithfulness. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with that. We can really overdevelop this, but let's look at this today, because I want to see, people are like, well, I can't lose my salvation, which means I can't lose anything. Friend, don't lose sight of the work. Don't lose sight of the master, and don't lose a responsibility or stewardship that has been entrusted to you by God. I don't want you to lose that. I want you to be able to go to heaven with rewards. I want you to be busy doing the Lord's work on this earth. So let's not lose sight of that. So what do we find? Let's go, if we would, 1 Corinthians chapter 4. We're just going to look at verse 1 and 2 here. We're going to do a little cherry picking, and then we'll get back into our Gospels here. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, we need to see here that if we're talking about stewardship, we're talking about faithfulness, okay? The reason why the stewardship should be taken away, the reason why the responsibility should be removed, the one that was entrusted to us by God, is going to be due to unfaithfulness. Unfaithfulness. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, 1 and 2, it says, "Let a man so account of us as the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful." Now, this is an interesting thought, but here's the idea, is that we are going to do something with that which we have been given, okay? And the faithful man is going to do that. You know what the unfaithful man is going to do? He's going to receive the blessing that wasn't intended for his benefit, but it was to be given to him in good standing, in good order, that he was going to use that for somebody else. But the unjust man, the unfaithful one, says, "I really like this. I think I'll keep some or all for myself." And there's a lot of people that do that. What are some of the things that we think that we possess that's given to us by God? That's the second part of the sermon. We're going to look at some specifics, though not an exhaustive list. We're going to look at some specifics of things that God has given us. He has blessed us with things, not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others, right? So just keep that in our mind, or keep this in our mind when we get there, that it is required that stewards be found faithful, because the things that we're entrusted with are intended to be used for the benefit and the blessing of others and the Lord's work, okay? The work of and the care for God's people, we could say, right? Reaching them, feeding them, raising them, all these types of things. The opposite of this is selfishness. Go back just a few pages here to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12 is, I think, where most Americans for sure find themselves, but I would say this really is a natural state of carnal man, is this guy right here. Luke chapter 12, starting in 15, says, "And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth," right? What do we know? What a shame it is for a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul. Yet even after salvation, there's a tendency to what? To keep up in store, right? Keep some back for a rainy day. Verse 16, "And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns, I will build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and all my goods." Wait, what? All my fruits and all my goods? I see a problem with perception right here. I mean, he's totally lost sight. Or he didn't have any sight. Nonetheless, he's got the whole perspective is wrong. "This I'll do, I'll pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God." See here, he's not even investing in the right places. He's not doing anything right. He's not investing toward the Lord. What do we know about the treasures that are laid up on earth? Friend, this is where moth and rust doth corrupt and all these types of things, right? As soon as you keep it in store, it's going to get corrupted. It's going to get defiled, right? To see people invest in material possessions is foolish. To see people invest in money and economy, I believe, is foolish. Now, I'm not saying, don't have money, don't have things, but that's not our security. That is a false sense of security. Friend, that one who is laying up treasure like this man, he is deceived, because riches deceive you. There is no security in riches. There is no security in wealth. There is no security in possessions. And we see that right here, because God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose these things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And he said unto his disciples, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, neither for your body, what ye shall put on. The life is more than meat, and the body is more than raiment. And he goes on from there. See, if we're thinking that this life is all about meat and raiment, the things that we can have, eat, and put on, we've totally missed the mark. Totally missed the mark. That is not what this is about. That's not the investment that we need to be making. We don't need to worry about what's in our garage or what's in our closet or what's in our pantry or if we even have those things. Friend, we need to make sure that we're investing in heavenly things. We need to make sure that we are taking what God has given us and using it for the benefit of His work, growing the kingdom, reaching people. This rich man builds bigger barns rather than, what did I say was kind of a key theme that I had picked out there in Luke chapter 16, rather than investing in people, right? The rich man Lazarus, rich man didn't invest in people, he invested in himself, okay? That one, the unjust steward, he was going towards the end. He was called out, and all of a sudden then he was, super benevolent with his master's money. He was helping somebody out, selfishly motivated, no doubt. But what about this guy here? He wasn't investing in others. He wasn't helping anybody else. One would think, man, I've got this great fertile ground, and I've got all this abundance and all this fruit, and it just doesn't stop. I mean, it's not just producing, it's overproducing. Wouldn't you think that a man would say, you know what, I could give all this away and still have too much, right? I could give away everything knowing that this ground is so good, it's going to overproduce again. It's a fountain. It's like it's nonstop. One would think, but rather, what do we find? Well, let me just hoard it. Let me just keep it for myself. He's not investing in people. So let's go back to Luke chapter 16, our main passage here, and just a couple things I want to pick out. Number one, he said, also unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. Listen, there is here a suspicion of waste. It's a foolish thing for a man to think that he'll not be held accountable for the things he's in possession of, right? We ought to have that mindset that, you know what, there may come a day of reckoning, reconciliation. There may come a day when we have to give an account. Why would this man have lost sight of having to give an account? Well, he had lost sight of that. And you know what I see here actually, and I don't know that it's maybe a main point, but it says, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. Now apparently, this would be a true accusation. I think that man's, wasting your goods. Or maybe not. Friend, we have accusers. Right? We have an enemy that accuses. There's an accuser of the brethren the Bible talks about, right? So, you've heard locks on doors keeps honest people honest. You think about the fact that if we're expecting an audit, then we just keep our books above board. I mean, isn't that kind of what a logical person? I know that's what I do, right? I don't want to get audited. I don't want to get stopped. I don't want to get harassed, but you know what? There may come an accusation sometime, and I'm going to be glad that I've got my books in order type of a thing. So not only are we working for the master, but we understand that there's going to be accusations. There's going to be accusers. There's going to be a time maybe when we have to defend what it is that we have done, whether it's to the Lord or whether it's to the accusers. Okay, but there may come a time when we need to actually give an account. Now, what do we find in verse 2? And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? I don't know if this was made like with disappointment. And obviously this is a parabolic teaching here, but was he surprised? Did he know? Did he have his suspicions? Was he expecting him to come in and just give a good defense and be like, okay, yeah, no problem. Carry on. How is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayst be no longer steward. So what do we find? He has lost his stewardship. Friend, there is a call to reconcile, and there is a loss of stewardship. Just because we can't lose our salvation doesn't mean that we can't ever lose what it is that God has given us. I have mentioned it before, and I do believe it, that God will cut man's life on earth short. because of these types of things, because of unfaithfulness, because he's not doing anything with what it is that God's given him. He's got an expectation for this man or for this lady or for this, a way that he can help, and he's just not doing anything with it, and so one would actually or could lose the stewardship. What else do we find here? Then the steward said within himself, "What shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig to beg. I am ashamed." You know what? He's had a pretty cush life. I don't know if he was middle management or, no, he was a steward, so we know he was at the top. He was unjust, but he's not ready to go dig ditches. He's not ready to do common man's work. That's too honest, I believe, because even begging, there's a certain maybe honesty about begging, right? You've got to really humble yourself, I believe, to kind of go out and to ask people for assistance. And I know today with panhandlers and stuff, there's frauds and other people out there, and so I'm not really talking about that, but I mean just to actually humble yourself and to go and ask for assistance, right? That's a humbling thing. Imagine you've fallen on hard times. Maybe you've lost your job. You've got into some debt, medical debt, or whatever the case is, and you just really need some assistance. It's a hard thing sometimes to go and to ask somebody for assistance. Hey, we need a place to stay for a little while. Can you help us out? Hey, we actually don't have anything in the pantry. It's been really tight. Can you help us out? That's a hard thing to do. And so what does it say? I'm not going to go dig and to beg. I'm ashamed. I'm not going to go beg. So what do I see here? I see that he almost panics when losing the stewardship rather than having the diligence that he should have had the whole time. Right? He's lost his sight of what was important. He was maybe skimming off the top. Maybe he was just, I don't know. We don't have any details, so it doesn't even matter the specifics on this. But friend, when we lose that stewardship, it's too late. It's too late. We don't need to panic. Don't even bother yourself panicking when you lose that stewardship, because it's too late. What we should have done is not lost sight in the first place. And that's why sermons like this are applicable, because we need to make sure that we stay on top, right? I'm not trying to kick a man when he's down. I'm trying to keep us from falling, right? So he panics when he loses the stewardship rather than having the diligence the whole time. This man is left to cheat rather than work because he had no integrity. I believe that if he had integrity, he wouldn't have been fired in the first place. Maybe it was a false accusation and then he wouldn't have been fired. But nonetheless, he's left to cheat. So what does he do? Again, I'm not going to go through and develop this from here on out, but he goes and he makes deals with the ones that were in debt to his master. Hey, take that 100 that you owe and let's write that you only owe 50. I used to think that he was actually collecting on a lesser part to satisfy the master. But I believe what it is it's actually these ones are indebted to the master and they keep the record, but this one here is actually to go and to maybe reconcile that, or it's the borrowers that keep the record, and then this man goes and signs off on it. So he's actually, I don't believe that he's collecting the half, collecting the 80% to satisfy his master and bringing that to him. I believe what he's doing is he's rewriting the debt, which actually is still very beneficial to the one in debt, right? He's saying, you owe 100, let's just rewrite that you only owe 50. Now, what's he trying to do? He's actually not trying to satisfy the master. He's just trying to buy friends is what he's doing. He's investing in people, but it's to buy friends so that when he gets fired and kicked out on the street, he's got a place to go. He's got somebody that'll say, oh yeah, you did help us out in a big way. Why don't you stay with us? And so this is not the Lord in heaven talking about an eternal reward. This is a Lord on earth, a boss that is talking about a carnal benefit here and a carnal intelligence, right? Being smart on the earth is what we're talking about, or what he's teaching here. But remember, what are we talking about? We're talking about being a faithful steward. The things that don't belong to us, the things that belong to the master that are entrusted unto us that are to be used for the benefit of the master's work. So there is a judgment for stewardship. This is our first point that I want to look at today, this judgment for stewardship. Look in Matthew chapter 25, if you will. Matthew 25, starting in 14. We see here a parable teaching of the talents. 25, Starting in 14, for the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. So again, perfectly lays out here this model that we've been establishing of stewardship. Who's the steward, who's the master, and whose belongings they are. Okay? And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway he took the journey. Great point. Not going to develop this out here, but God doesn't give everybody the same thing. Okay? He gives people according as he has purpose for you. Okay? If somebody else has one gift, if somebody else has another amount, if somebody else has another blessing, if somebody else has another opportunity, good for them. Pay attention to what the Lord has given you. Okay? Don't compare what the Lord has given us or what he's doing in us with other people. That's not wise. Okay? Unto the one he gave 5, to another 2, to another 1, every man according to his several ability, and straightway he took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that received 1 went and digged in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. So we see here what? A reconciliation. We see a reckoning coming. Don't think that this is a big judgment, a day of reckoning. This is a reconciliation. This is being called to give an account of what it was that you were given. It's exactly what we find here. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received the 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliveredst unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained besides them 5 talents more. His Lord had said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. He also that had received the 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliveredst unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, the exact same thing as the guy that had the 5. Right? You say, well, I only got 2, and I'm pretty bummed out, and I wanted 5, and you should have given. He said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. What a great teaching here. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. Then he, which had received the 1 talent, came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering while thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, thou house that is thine. Yeah, I didn't even bring it with me. It's still out here. Right? I buried it. It's covered up. Nothing's going to happen to it. Yeah, that's exactly right. Nothing is going to happen to it. It's going to stay the exact same. Is that good enough? Is that good enough for the Lord? You know, I didn't lose it. You know, I mean, it didn't go down in value. If he'd have known the Lord, if he'd have known that he was a hard man, right? That he reaped where he strawed not. If he'd have known that it would have turned to gold. You ever know those people that just everything turns to gold that they touch type of a thing? You know, if he'd have known, why wouldn't he have invested the 1? Well, I didn't want to lose it, but he should have known. Friend, like I told you, it's usually the dum-dums here where I find myself thinking that's exactly what I would have done. I probably would have been like this guy. You know what? I can't bear to lose this one thing that the Lord has given me, so I'm not going to put it out there. I'm not going to invest it because I might risk losing it, messing it up. Thou oughtest therefore to put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. Cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and the holy angels with him, shall he sit upon the throne. And it goes on from there, speaking of these things. But what do we find? There is an importance to stewardship. It's an important thing. There's a day of reckoning. We'll have to answer for the things that were entrusted unto us. So we see the importance here of stewardship. We see the accountability to God, and we see the faithful use of God-given resources. And so what we need to do, friend, is we can, and we will in the second part, identify what are those God-given resources. What are the things that we have access to that are given to us by God to invest in other people? Because if we don't recognize it, how can we know? How can we invest it if we don't recognize what it is? So I've got just a few examples that we'll look at in just a minute. In 1 Peter 4, you can turn there back towards the back of the Bible. 1 Peter chapter 4, just a couple verses. I want to see here. Again, we are to be faithful. 1 Peter 4, 10 and 11, if any man speaks, so let him speak as the oracles of God. So are we talking about just physical things? Remember, we're talking about spiritual stewardship as well. We're talking about knowledge that we have. We're talking about being able to invest in people, not just with the giving of our things, or even not limited to the giving of our time. But friend, what are we doing to benefit other people, to help other people? Again, that would be totally treading on the sermon I preached just not so many weeks ago about determining to impart into others, right? What is it that we're investing in others? So I'm not going to take time to do that now. But if any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do so as the ability which God giveth, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial, as though some strange thing happened to you. So what do we find in verses 10 and 11? As every man had received the gift, even so minister the same unto other, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. That's the verse I was going for right there. That manifold grace of God. Friend, we are stewards of grace. We're stewards of other things as well, right? It's not just physical. It is spiritual. It is even, I like that it talks about here, the oracles of God. We think about the things that are hard to be understood in the Bible. And you know what? There are some people that are really good at understanding hard things in the Bible. And you know what they need to do? They need to not just sit in their living room and be all smart about it and think that they know the whole Bible cover to cover. You get out there and impart some of that wisdom to other people, right? Help some other people understand these hard things, these things that are hard to be known. In verse 9, it talks about hospitality. In verse 8, it talks about charity. In verse 7, it talks about prayer. Notice these things came from God first. That's why we're to impart them unto others and use them for the glory of God. What are some other things that we invest in for ourselves, or that we hold, or that we withhold selfishly? Let's look at some of these types of things. These are some of the examples that I had mentioned, the blessings that we have that God would intend that we use for His work. They don't belong to us, but we think they belong to us, okay? And again, this is not an exhaustive list. There is more to this. I just wanted to point out, 4 or 5 things here that we can look at very quickly. First of all, look in Psalm 127:3. Psalm 127:3, big deal that a lot of people, I do believe, have lost sight of. Children are a blessing from God. Starting in 3 of Psalm 127, the Bible says, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord." They are given to us by God. For what purpose? Why are children given to us? So that we can have and to keep and to hold and to, just make little clones of ourselves and see what we can do with them. I mean, some people, I think they really like corrupting their children. Some people tattoo their children. Some people teach them stupid things. Some people give their kids stupid haircuts, try to train them up to be little rebels and, all these types of things. For shame, children are an heritage to the Lord, of the Lord, it says. And the fruit of the womb is His reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gates. So what do we find out about this? Children are not given to us just so that we can have a lot of children for our benefit, for our blessing, or even worse, for somebody to try to exalt themselves because they have a lot of children or more children than other people. That's not why we have children. But they're a blessing from God. They're a gift. But what are you to do with them? Well, just as arrows, as the Bible teaches, they are to be sharpened, they're to be honed, they're to be ready, and they are to be used. They're to be sent out. That's what you do with arrows. You sharpen them, you aim them, and you use them. Okay? So we are teaching and training our children to go forth and to do the work of the Lord. Not just to keep them for ourselves and to say that we have a lot of them. What are you doing with your children? And I'm asking that kind of rhetorically here, but what is it that we're doing? There's too many parents out here that are babysitting. That's what they're doing. They're just babysitting. They're just raising these children until they're old enough to get out of the house, right? They're looking forward to being the empty nester, right? I have people in my line of work all the time tell me what a frustration their kids are, right? How they cost them so much money and how they're such jerks. And I mentioned, people ask me, how old are your kids now? Because they remember my kids from the time they were born. They see them intermittently in my place of business. How old are your kids now? I say, well, my daughter just turned 15 and my boy, he's 11. They're like, oh no. Well, some people are like, oh, well, the good years are gone. Oh, she's 15. Oh, get ready. Really? I think my daughter's perfectly lovely. I think she's going to be a fine woman, right? We've invested in her. We've trained her. We've sharpened her. We've honed her. We pointed her in the right direction. And you know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to actually being able to send her out, right? Because it's of the Lord and it's been a blessing. And my children are no different than your children. I don't think I'm trying to exalt my children here. We're talking about children in general. But people lose sight of that. They lose sight of the importance of children and the fact that they are a blessing from God. Especially think about those that discourage people from having children. What a shameful thing that is. They'll tell people, all the different things. You've heard them. I don't need to make the examples, but I often hear people that celebrate the fact that they never had any kids, that look down on people that have got a bunch of kids. They think it's foolish that you would invest in children, all these types of things. Children are an heritage of the Lord, the Bible teaches us. And you know what? We need to have our quiver full. We need to have our children and sharpen them and hone them and aim them and send them out. We should not be babysitting our kids. The second thing that we think that we possess, and we actually don't, is time. If you look in James, we don't own the time. I've told you before, so I'm not going to lament on it now. I don't understand time. I'm bound by time. I feel like more than most men, but I really cannot comprehend eternity. I don't get it. And I don't know how an eternal God deals with us on our timeline either, because time doesn't make sense if it doesn't exist. I don't know. You don't want to know what's going on in here sometimes, but I struggle with this. But I'll tell you one thing. I know that time does not belong to me. I know that my time on this earth is short. I do know that, right? Whether it's 70 years, 70, or should it be 80? One of my ladies that I know is turning 100 this week. That's a ripe old age, isn't it? 100 years old. But really, in the grand scheme of things, how long is 100 years? It's nothing, right? It's nothing. Time does not belong to us. If we look in James chapter 4, starting in 13, it says, "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and convene there a year and buy and sell and get gain, whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It's even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanish away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or do that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin." Interesting when we put a little context to verse number 17 there, isn't it? What is it that knows to do good? Who is it that knows to do good and does it not? The guy that puts off for tomorrow what he should be doing today. The guy that thinks he's got all the time in the world. The guy that says, we're going to go here and we're going to build and we're going to invest, and in a year, this is what it's going to look like. Really? That's what you think? We don't own time. Christian, we need to be submitting our plans to the Lord. And we say it all the time, but I hope we know what it means when we say, if the Lord will, right? Another way you'll hear it said a lot of times is, Lord willing, I'll be there, right? And that's not just to leave yourself a little out in case you don't make it. It's to say, according to the Lord's will, I'll be there. I'm doing it. If the Lord will, then I'll do it. We need to submit our plans to the Lord. We need to consider His will. Don't put off until tomorrow what we should be doing today. Silly, phrase, apply it to whatever. But listen, when we know that we need to do something and we're not doing it, what are we waiting for? We are not promised tomorrow. Proverb 27:1 tells us, boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. We threaten people with that all the time at the door when we're out soul winning, don't we? They'll say, oh, I don't have time, I'll look at this later. That's what you think. You think you'll look at it later. Friend, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are promised tomorrow. I can tell people that all the time, super confidently. Do I apply that to my own scale here? Do I think about the fact that I am not promised tomorrow, and neither are you? I know there's people out there that I should be witnessing to. I know there's people out there I should be helping. I know there's people that could use some assistance, or use a word, or use a phone call, or use some love or compassion. I know that. And I say, I'll do it tomorrow. Man, this week is busy. I'll get a hold of them next week. Why would we say that? We shouldn't say that. Don't get a hold of them next week. Boast not thyself on tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. How about in Haggai 2:8? Haggai 2:8, right at the end of the Old Testament. Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, so 3 back from Matthew here. Haggai, chapter number 2, verse 8. Just a simple statement here. We think, I'm making so much money, I'm going to lay up all this treasure in heaven. God says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. What is it that you really possess? All the gold, all the silver? Take it for yourself. It's all the Lord's. Every bit of it's the Lord's. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. The things that we think belong to us, but they really don't. But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth, that He may establish His covenant, which He sware unto thy fathers as it is this day. Now, we're not going to contextualize this, but pretty simple statement here, isn't it? But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth. Right? To have anything, to have any standing, to have anything at all, He gives us that power. So let me just ask again, as stewards, what is it that we're doing with the blessings? They're not our blessings. They're the Lord's blessings, right? The children that He gives us, the time that He gives us, the money that He gives us the opportunity to have. What are we doing with it? How about in Psalm 24:1? Psalm 24, verse number 1. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. That's a big statement with such few words. Okay? The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Verse 2 says, for He hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods, and goes on from there. The earth and the fullness are the Lord's. I want you to know that God doesn't just own the planet. We think, God created it and He owns the planet, right? It says the fullness thereof. He owns the planet. He owns the resources. He's got the mineral rights, okay? He owns all the precious metals. He owns every creature, and He owns every being. That's what the fullness is. The fullness is the earth and everything in it and on it and about it. And He owns it. He owns all that stuff. So we don't own land, friend. We don't own property. I know you got a mortgage, or you want a mortgage, or you used to have a mortgage, or you paid off your mortgage. Oh, good. You own your property. That's what you think. Friend, we don't own anything. It's all the Lord's. Everything is the Lord's. It's the American government's first, but it's the Lord's all over that. Okay? Quit paying your taxes and find out if you own it or not. God owns not just the planet, but every resource, creature, and being on it. Fullness is everything that fills it up. Look in Psalm 50 too. This really fills this out a little bit as well, looking at the beasts. Doesn't call them beasts, but in Psalm 50, verse 10 says, every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. Okay? And then he says, I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. Now, who said that? Well, verse 7, I am God, even thy God. The Lord owns it all. He's got it all. If I were hungry, I wouldn't even tell anybody, because it's all mine anyway. Who do I need to ask? Who do I need to consult? Nobody. Need no permission. It's all mine. So I love to see that. It's something that we just need to keep in perspective, Christian. We just need to realize and remember that everything that we have is a blessing from God, not to be possessed by us, to be used for Him. It changes our mindset, changes our focus. Remember, come a day of reckoning, what is it that we're going to be held accountable of? We're not going to answer for our sins, but what is it that we're going to be called into account for? How about our own bodies? Look in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Yeah, so I'll give away all my possessions. I'll give away everything that I have. I'm not going to worry about material possessions. I don't care about property ownership. I don't care about anything. Well, what about our lives? Verse 19 and 20 simply says, what, know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are yours. Nope, that's not what it says. It doesn't say they're ours. It doesn't say it's for us. It doesn't say that we owe God any part of what we have. He says, for you are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. They're God's. We're God's possession. He owns the world. He owns the fullness of it. He owns us. We owe everything that we have to the Lord, but it's not for us to keep and to have and to hold and to cherish forever and ever. Amen. It's not like that when it's these types of things. God wants us, and that includes our talents, and that includes our skills. So it's not just the material possessions. It's not just the things that are in our garage, in our closet, in our cupboards, or lack thereof. He wants us. He just wants us to serve Him. He just wants us to pay attention to Him. He just wants us to make sure that we're in alignment with what He is doing. So there's 3 actions here that I want to look at. One more Bible verse here. 3 actions that I want to look at. We'll round it out real quick in the conclusion. First action, consider in your heart that the Master is always over you, right? That's an easy way that we can just keep ourselves in check. And what that does is it keeps us humble. It keeps us from being lifted up. It keeps us from going rogue and working in our own strength and doing things that we're going to possess and that we're going to store and that we're going to hang on to. It keeps that from happening when we remember that the Master is always over us. Remember that unfaithful steward there seemed like he was going rogue in his actions because he felt like he had the liberty to use the Master's goods for his own benefit. And even in writing discount, it was that he would buy friends, find favor by going rogue, if you will. The second action that we need to do, firstly, keep in your heart that the Master is always over you. Secondarily, keep your eye on the work. Now, what that means is, remember that we work for the Master. Okay? It's easy to think that, well, I'm on break right now. Hey, take a break if you need a break. But your whole life can't be a break, right? We need to remember that we are working for the Lord. If He owns us, if He bought us with a price, if there is an expectation, and if there is a day of reckoning, then it's not always break time. There's got to be something going on. So think about that. Remember that we work for the Master. Colossians 3:23 and 24. We'll go ahead and go here over a few pages. Last verse. You know these very well. And whatsoever ye do, the Bible tells us in Colossians 3:23, whatsoever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ, it says. Whatsoever you do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men. The third thing that we need to do is act wisely. Right? When we identify these things, we see these things, we recognize that there's things that are in our life that they're not our possession, then what are we going to do with those? Then we're going to act wisely. Right? We're going to actually do something with the knowledge and the understanding that we have. And why is that? Because we want to find favor in the sight of the master. That's what I want to find out. I would love to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Amen? Everybody thinks they're going to hear that. I don't know if they are. Everybody thinks they will. That's what we all want to hear. I want to hear it. You want to hear it? Well done, thou good and faithful servant. That was in Matthew 25. So many are not going to hear that. We all hope to hear it. Do we realize the risk of accountability in service? Do we understand that there is an accounting? There's a day of reckoning or a reconciliation coming. The foolish steward doesn't keep this in mind. And this is why a sermon like this would be preached. It's because none of us are perfect. None of us have arrived. We all have areas in our life that we can work on. But these points here are important that we keep it in mind. Now, why do I say this is important? Because the foolish servant, he doesn't keep these in mind. What does he do? He eats. He's a glutton. He's a winebibber. He's a drunkard. He eats. He drinks. He consumes. It's all about the flesh. It's all about me. It's all about what I want. He takes pleasure. He is reckless. He is careless. He is thoughtless. And he is wasteful. And why is that important? Because he wasted the master's goods. He didn't waste his own goods. They didn't belong to him. They were given to him that he would use them for the master's use. And he squandered them. And so he's the unfaithful steward. Amen? So we got an idea of that, what it is to be a steward, and what it is that we don't own, and what we can do with those things that aren't ours. Let's pray. God in heaven,